Welcome, Claudia, for our
Thank
conversation
you.
today.
Thank you, Harris.
Welcome.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you and pleasure. So tell me a little bit about your starting of your career in advertising and how did it all start and then what made you not do that anymore?
Yeah, that was the big question. What made me not do that anymore? And it took me a while to answer that, actually. And yeah, I always like to think about my career to date as two careers in one. First one is the advertising part, right? I spent about 15 years in marketing and advertising. And it was a career that I freely chose and I really enjoyed actually because I mean I was young. It was a bit of a it was an exciting ride. It was advertising was still a bit wild and a bit very creative, and I really was appealed to that at that time. I remember while studying, one of my university classmates, her dad had an ad agency, so she would tell me a bit about how things were in the advertising world. And I was studying communication science. So I said, oh, I want to do that. I want to work in advertising. Without doing much more further investigation, at that time, my boyfriend was Spanish, so I decided to take the leap very unconsciously to start and go to look for a job in advertising in the south of Spain in Malaga. Really to find out that there were no ad agencies that were really worthwhile creating a career in. So very early on, I ended up in Madrid, where I really developed a very interesting career. And I started out at a PR agency. I found that not so creative and went on to the direct marketing world. And direct marketing at that point, at that time, I really perceived it as very creative because while in advertising, for instance, you work with specific formats, right? You work with the 20-second clip or with a radio jingle. And in direct marketing, you could use anything, right? You could use a pen and make a campaign out of that. So that
Right.
was really something that I very much enjoyed. And I must say I had a very interesting career in there. So I was lucky enough to work to launch the brand Barclaycard in Spain. And at that point, Barclaycard or Barclays did have offices, but Barclaycard didn't have offices in Spain. So for me, it was a huge growth opportunity working directly with the client in Northampton in the UK, creating a very big team from the beginning because we had huge budgets. And I learned a lot and it was beautiful. From there, I briefly went on to the client side, so to speak, to work as a marketing director for a real estate company. And I found that really my joy was more in working for different clients, thinking about different brands at the same time. So I went back to the advertising world, and that time I started my own agency together with Jordi, my Catalan business partner, who would have this agency specialized in healthcare communications and marketing in Barcelona. Started that in Madrid. We opened up offices in Mexico DF. It was wild, and you know, I remember at some point, or while we were opening the offices in Mexico, we were asked to present the Creativity Awards, the ASPID Awards in healthcare, in the Mexican edition. And I kind of found myself like, wow, I guess I must have made it in this world because look at me, right? Presenting awards, doing interviews and all that. And my mom was tremendously proud of me. And it was not long after that really I didn't have an insight. It wasn't an insight. It was just a felt sense. And it happened on a Monday morning. I remember getting into the office and I was kind of mindlessly answering some emails. And then I asked myself this question, which is, Claudia, do you want to retire in this? And the answer was very clear and it came right away. And it was no. And I really hadn't expected that because, I mean, things were going great. And from the outside, it was a beautiful career. And I had freely chosen it as well. So I really didn't understand what happened. And at the same time, as this answer was so clear to me, I figured I had to do something with it. So I decided to, over the course of a couple of months, leave the agency and not think about my next steps until I really left the communications and agency realm because I figured I might want to do something completely different, although I had no clue whatsoever as to what that could be.
Hmm.
So I remember I went on a trip. I did the Trans-Siberian Railway, and I thought to myself, well, while I'm on that trip, I'll for sure have this great idea about what the next big thing, right?
Hmm.
And I didn't at all. I was just present in the journey. And when I came to Beijing, which is where it ended, it was like, okay, I guess I'm flying back to Madrid, and I'll see what I do afterwards. And it was in September, I remember, and it was a time when many coaching trainings were starting. And I always had been quite interested in self development, in personal growth, and
Hmm.
so I said, okay, why not do this coaching certification while I think about the next big thing, basically out of hobby, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, and also that moment coincided with a personal breakup. The person for whom I went to Malaga in the first place, we had a I would say 19-year long relationship that kind of around the same time finished. You imagine me doing the coaching training, right? Having left my corporate career without any clue about what was to come next, because I
Right.
just didn't know. Coming out of this 19-year long relationship without having any idea, I really didn't think about the day after tomorrow, because I just couldn't. I didn't have any vision for beyond that, right?
Hmm.
So that's when I did the coaching. For me, at that moment in my life, coaching turned out to be tremendously useful.
Hmm.
Still not in explaining the why of things. I
Hmm.
think that came little by little, and I can tell you a bit about how that came about. But basically, in starting to envisage new possibilities for my life, right? And
Hmm.
starting to think, instead of tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, hey, next week, hey, what about next month? Hey, I can do this, hey, I can do that.
Hmm.
And as I found that to be so powerful for myself, I thought, oh, I think I'm onto something that I want to use for my next career. So I started basically the easy way in, which was for me using my background in marketing and in
Hmm.
advertising. So I figured, yeah, I think that if I focus on personal branding, I can use the branding principles that I used to learn and teach in the marketing world. And that for me was the easy way in. And I very early found out that personal branding and product branding or service branding don't have that much in common, right? There's
Hmm.
some principles behind it, but in
Hmm.
essence, they're kind of different.
Hmm.
So I started to develop this, my own methodology there, and I'm really noticing there is so much more to this than just the superficial
Hmm.
branding layer, right?
Hmm.
And I started to discover the importance of essence
Hmm.
in personal branding, and that it's not just about projecting an image, and it's really about tapping into what is in here,
Hmm.
and really, first of all, getting acquainted with it, because most of us, we don't even realize, right,
Right.
well, all that's in here, and then using that in order to, back then I would say, be your best self, and
Hmm.
increase your impact, and things like that, still a bit commercial
Hmm.
messages. And what I noted little by little is that that has somehow evolved into what today I would call authentic leadership. Yeah, I think that I love the term authentic leadership a lot better than personal branding.
Hmm.
And I think it goes beyond. And what I'm also noticing is that in coaching right now, I somehow tend to attract clients who are looking to enhance their leadership presence and really wanting to look inside and count on that and trust that instead of
Hmm.
what's outside, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, that's the story in a nutshell of how
Hmm.
I became a coach.
Wow. So your journey to getting into coaching and starting to work as an authentic leadership coach, right? So how do you define authentic leadership now, working for so many years? You know, if you were to tell maybe someone who doesn't know much about it, a layman, in few words, what would be your definition?
I would say it is about bringing your whole self to leadership, and because leadership, I realized, isn't about doing.
Hmm.
There's best practices, there's skills you can learn, but it's really about the being, right? It is
Hmm.
the place from which I act, the place from which I
Hmm.
make my decisions, the place from which I lead, the
Hmm.
place from which I handle challenges. And that is so much more important than the more
Hmm.
superficial part of the doing,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
I learned that the hard way. I mean,
Huh.
when I was in my first career, I remember I didn't lead like that. And I basically remember I was we could say there's this blueprint of the successful executive in advertising, right? And for me, my career was a bit like a ladder, and it was taking steps and measuring everything by external achievements, right? And then you go from here, you go to there, and then you go to there, and there's more recognition, there's more pay, there's etc. And what I noticed is that I basically was always focusing outward, looking outside,
Right.
in order to take my decisions, in order to really, for my definition of success. My definition of success wasn't really mine. It was basically what I saw around me and what you just did while you were in a career, right? Or maybe what I had my dad see doing, and yeah, little by little, I started to notice, hey, in my first career, my decisions weren't really mine. It was really social convention. It was beliefs that I had built up, and I was just going through the motions. And then I also realized that's basically why my first career felt like hard work. I enjoyed it a lot, and it was beautiful, and I had a lot of external success, right? And yet it felt like hard work, and it felt like somehow something was always off. And then there were these short bursts of achievements, and then I would be fulfilled and look at me and look at what we did as a team and blah, and it would fade away very, very quickly. So I didn't realize it back then, but now looking back at it, I noticed that it was really all about external, how would you say it? External reward or
Yeah, it was bought over, right? Others' parameters of success, I think. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, very materialistic approach of feeling fulfilled.
totally, yeah. And I didn't really associate career with other kinds of fulfillment.
Right.
So there was my personal life and there was my career. And I didn't really find a way to integrate both. And I think that is one of the first things that comes up when you think of authentic leadership. Yeah, and it's also about becoming more in touch with not just the head, the brain, and the rational intelligence. My decisions were really rational, right? You just do this because of this. And also my behaving was very much informed by what I thought others would want to see in me. So I would behave like a managing director. I would behave like an aggressive executive. I would just go through the motions and do the thing. And that's basically why it kind of felt off at points,
Right.
at some points. Right?
Right.
Just so you did.
So tell me, when you say, being versus doing, when a leader is operating from a state of being, how do you think they show up at workplace?
They show much more grounded, much more centered, because they can trust. They first of all, they are aware of their resources, of what they're bringing. They are aware of their default, of their triggers, of their default reactions or way of working. And they also, once you recognize it, you can work on it, you can change it. So I think it brings a lot of confidence, of self-confidence, without knowing what is to come. I mean, our context is becoming every time more VUCA, Bani, or however you want to call it, right? And with Gen IE, things are changing even at a faster pace. So in this chaotic, uncertain environment, you cannot trust on things that you've learned by heart. What you really can trust on and what you always bring with you, right, is what's in here. And if you know how to tap into that, then you show up much more grounded, much more confident, I would say, much more present as well. Because you also become aware of it is not, that was one of the things I really noticed. In my first career, I was the one leading, controlling, managing. Well, I wasn't at the wheel. And whenever I wasn't at the wheel, I would panic.
Yeah.
So yeah, authentic leaders basically know that if you just show up and bring all that you are and all that you know, then you will find a way, and you don't have to have all the answers. And it's not about having the answers. It's not about being perfect. It's about how you show up how
Right.
you
And
relate to your
right.
circumstance. Yeah.
And even, practicing vulnerability is a choice, right?
Oh yes, Brené Brown said it so eloquently, right?
Hmm.
I love. I've used that quote, and I love it because it's true. People tend to think, oh, some people are just more authentic than others, and it's not that we all are, right? There's also another quote I love, which is by Jonathan Fields. He says, "Don't try to be different. Accept the fact that you already are."
Right. 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 And I think there are many benefits when you become authentic and you show up, be who you are. So tell me, what are the benefits that you have noticed when you work with clients? What is it that they report to you
Hmm.
being authentic? How
Yeah.
is it benefiting them?
I think what I most tend to hear is that joy and confidence return. So, confidence for what we just said. And you can be more confident if you are aware of your resources. And joy, I'm reminded now of a process that we recently concluded, which was with a coachee who was starting a new role, and she knew her default, and she said, okay, I know that when I'm starting a new role, I want to prove myself because of she had done a lot of work on herself in terms of analysis, in terms of therapy, and in terms of understanding the why of what had happened. So she knew that she didn't want to take that into her new role. And that's why she wanted to do the coaching. She said, I want to connect with joy, and I want to see this as the opportunity for me to bring my best worth, my best value, and all that I can bring to this, right? And looking at it from that perspective rather than the perspective of I have to. So we basically, what we worked on in there was going from the feeling of I have to, which was also the feeling I had constantly in my first career. Because if you're looking outward to establish your worth and to establish how you should behave, then obviously you're going to feel like that, right? And so what we worked on is making things a want to. What is it you really want to do? What is it you want to bring? And that automatically connected her with the joy of being at work. And
So
I think that's
powerful,
so
yeah.
powerful. So yeah. And then there's also impact, of course. I mean, it's not just, so first indicator I would say is feeling. How does it feel to lead? And if I'm in integrity, right, if I'm acting in integrity with what I believe in, what's important for me, my values, then I automatically I feel more aligned. And if I listen not just to my head and the rational thoughts that can hinder the other intelligences so much, right? And so when you start to listen to the other intelligences as well, like the heart, right? And how do I feel about it? Or the gut, what is really the sense, the felt sense and the need here. And when you tap into that, then you become so much more complete as a leader and your impact changes. And also if you're aware of who you are and what you bring, you can voice it a lot clearer, and
Right.
therefore you're remembered differently as well. And here I think marketing comes in again. It's so it really increases your impact when you're not just trying to be politically correct or doing the things that you think you should be doing, but really acting from the inside out instead of the outside in. But your impact changes. The way you convey your ideas is so much more impactful, I would say. Yeah.
And it's true you then, right? It's not just you made up. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the real you coming out of you.
Yeah. Plus you free up so much energy, do you? Because you're not constantly acting
True.
and then constantly holding up this corporate mask, or that's energy draining, I can tell you.
Yeah. So with so much of work, Claudia, that you've done around authentic leadership coaching, where do you find the challenge, with leaders? Because sometimes people do want to be there, but they can't, because there are challenges, there are others around perceiving, there's a value judgment there people are kind of fearful about. What stops people from not getting there?
Yeah. And you mentioned it. It's basically the fear, right? Because it is the fear of what if I say what I think and people don't like it.
True.
And I always ask that if what they say is liked by everybody, right? Because when you think of it, you cannot be liked by everybody, right? And still there is this sometimes irrational fear of what happens if I'm more true to myself? What will happen, right? And it's stepping into the unknown because we know how it is to do it the other way around, right? And that feels comfortable, that feels safe, that feels I'm in control, and really being more authentic. What I notice through both from myself and through a lot of the people I work with is that it feels uncomfortable because it feels insecure. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not in control. And it is really the leap of faith. And what most helps is conducting tiny experiments. It's not about, okay, I did it this way and now I'm going to do it that way forever. So what I really help people do is, first of all, become aware of their essence, right? And I always like to define essence as this unique combination of our traits, of our talents, of our experiences, and also of our beliefs, right? That make us who we are. And there's really no one like you. And once you become aware of that and you really start to look at each of those rather than individually, because this isn't about a model. This isn't about a step-by-step process where you take a coachee by the hand and you start identifying their character traits and their values and their brand. And still, it is all elements that are in the mix, right? So you do want to look at what do I really want? That is I would say, the most difficult question for people to answer. What is it I really want?
And I also feel that what am I ready to let go?
Yeah, what got you here won't get you there. And yet, hey, it helped me get to where I am today, right? Yeah, yeah, true. So by having more distinctions, my training was as an ontological coach. So I like to work with the power of language and being able to distinguish something means that you can use it or you can act upon it. You can change it if you want. So that is basically the first part is awareness, to take a bit of that fear away and to have people see, hey, there are things I can count on. There are things I do have more resources than I thought, and I become aware of them. And hey, what would happen if I would align just a bit more with my core values once I recognize them, right? Because something funny happens when you start to identify what is really important for you. And you start to look at your agenda and how your agenda reflects that back. Many times people notice, oh gosh, I haven't been living in alignment with this at all, right? And that's when this nagging feeling, I always point at the stomach, right? This nagging feeling comes in, right? I don't know what it is, but something feels off.
Right. And is there a way that you can find out your value system, before you think of alignment? Is there an easy way to do that?
It's very much case dependent because it very much depends on where the person is and where their biggest challenges lie. But overall, right, in taking or reducing the fear through experiments, I think that applies overall. It is uncovering. It is rather than discovering. Right? It's all things that are there, and it's just covered by layers of have-tos, by layers of social convention, by layers of my beliefs that I've built up over time. So once you start to poke through that and really see what is in there, and then invite people to, okay, start playing with that and start saying your opinion 3 times in the next meeting, just to see what happens, right? Assertiveness is also an interesting side effect of authentic leadership. So it's not a step-by-step thing that you do. It's not like a model. It's really more of a framework of knowing, okay, what is my essence made up of? And my essence is made up of so many different things, right? It is my character traits, and there are resources, and I can share those resources if you want with you for the listeners, and it's really okay. So who am I? Let's start to look at my personality traits.
Right.
And there's assessments you can do, free online assessments. There's the MBTI I personally like a lot, and see, okay, Now I'm recognizing things, or now I'm verbalizing things that were there and I didn't maybe realize, right?
Right.
Then talents and skills. People are very much aware of their skills because we've earned them through hard work, right? And people are not that aware of their natural talents, for
True.
instance. Difference is talent is inborn.
Mm.
So having people notice their talents and asking, okay, so what is it you've basically been doing all your life, and what are you sought out for? And when you were a kid, what did you do? How did you play? And what kind of friends did you have? And what did you essentially do? And then people start to discover, I've always been a peacemaker, or I've always been a listener, or I've always been this or that.
Mm.
So there's lots of things, and it goes from there to which are the more obvious things, and identifying values, and there's also assessments for that, and of course in coaching conversations they come out, and then there's also
Sorry, carry on. Yeah. Yeah.
oh, I could carry on for ages. there's so many things, right? It's my default reaction to things. It's how I relate with the world. It's my beliefs around how the world works and how I see myself in the world. It's how present I am. It's how in touch I am or prepared I am to listening to the full intelligence. And hey, what does my gut have to say here? What does my heart have to say here? And little by little, you start to take people from fear to, I always say the opposite of fear is love, right? And it's really the act of compassionate, of being compassionate with self and saying, okay, what would love do in this case? So I'm not going to default and acting or reacting out of fear. And what would love do? And really tap into that. And love would be recognizing who you are. And
And I would want you to share with me some more assessments, like you said, MBTI. What else? Or would you like to share some resources and that we can share with our audience?
Yeah, of course. And we share them afterwards as well. So, for instance, personality traits, I have my cheat sheet on here, is the MBTI, for instance. There's free online tests. And that's basically a good starting point to start to understand who am I, right? Then there is this cross-check with how others perceive me. So there's from 360 evaluations to what I personally prefer a lot more here, which is doing a public ID exercise, asking maybe 10 people in your world. And I always invite people to include people who have just got to know them and people have known them for their whole lives. People who have from their professional realm and people from their personal life, for instance, and make that a bit of a mix. 10 to 12 people. Okay, how would you describe me in one sentence? And what are 3 things that you think make me very powerful? And you can tweak that according to what you are looking for, right? But what are 3 things that you especially like about me, and 3 things I could improve upon? And also when I have started to incorporate is how do you feel being around me or working with me? That's also a very good indicator,
So you
right?
can always custom your assessment, right? And then just circulate it to people to see what responses you get.
Yeah. And also tell them, hey, there is no evaluation whatsoever attached to this, because then you won't get the full feedback, right?
Right.
So that is one thing. There is values, Barrett's Values Center, for instance. You can do for very little cost a small assessment on values. That makes a lot of sense. Identifying talents and skills is something that skills we all know because they're on our CV, right? We can show them. Talents is okay. Looking at, as we said, you can do a life graph and really start to draw your life in terms of, again, it depends on what you're looking for, but it could be, I want this fulfilled. I want to feel this fulfillment. So look at the most fulfilled and less fulfilled moments in your life and start to plot them and see what is really there. Preferred relationship style you can do from a DISC assessment to one I like, which is a free one by Bolton and Bolton, and see, okay, what's my preferred relationship style? How do I relate from here with other people? We have the lenses, right? How do I really, and their coaching is especially helpful, of course, because it's very hard to define or to identify our lenses by ourselves. And there a good coach can be really helpful. Emotional intelligence. How do I relate with my emotions, right? And there's so many resources online that we can help you identify your emotional intelligence. How do I like to make my decisions? There is this Dutch guy, and it's not because I'm Dutch. I think he's doing a great job, Christopher Snijders, who is really working with the three brains in coaching, right?
Yeah.
And saying, and around the alignment between the head brain, which usually is the predominant one
Right.
in work environment and context. And how do I align it with the heart, with the emotions? Because my emotions inform me of something. It's not that I can just do and ignore the feeling. Well, I can for some time, but yeah, not the idea. And then the gut. What's the gut saying? Because if the heart or the gut don't believe what the head is saying, then we're not in alignment. Right? So basically, the way we describe things conditions what we see. For instance, I can describe something as a threat or as an opportunity. And just notice in your body how it feels when you describe whatever work situation as, oh my God, this is chaos. This is what's coming is a threat, right? And look at what possibilities that opens up for you and how you're going to act, or maybe even rather than acting, how you're going to react, right? Because if you look at it like that, you're possibly more going to react than really stop, get present, and act. And so when what I'm noticing in the work with my clients is when you have it's maybe courage, and then it becomes a habit and second nature. When you start to feel overwhelmed, when something comes at you and you start to notice a reaction in yourself, is really stopping, breathing, and creating that space for yourself where you say, okay, how can I look at this from different angles, right? From different viewpoints. What is good about this bad thing? What is bad about this good thing? What's the opportunity here? What's possible from here? And so that very much determines the possible outcomes that we have. So yeah, how I phrase things conditions what's possible for me.
And sometimes it's very unconsciously utilized language, right? We don't know what's our language. We don't pay attention to what we're describing and how we're describing it.
Yeah.
So, how do you help people kind of become more aware of that?
In coaching, it's a funny thing because you start to get kind of trained in noticing words that people that the client doesn't really notice they say, right? And for instance, have tos. Yeah, because I have to do this and I have to do that. And I ask, do you have to? And then they stop and say, well, I actually don't have to do anything, right? And still I tell myself I have to. So what is the energy? And what does it allow me to do when I feel I have to do something? It's easy to get into this victim state, right? This victim mindset, because I have to, and it's the world obliging me to do things. So, and then when it doesn't work out, it's not my fault and it's their fault. I know. And then I can start to whine. And whereas if I choose to say, I choose to do this, I get to do this, I want to do this, then the ownership is with me. And
Right.
it's just one word and it's a world of difference.
Yeah, I mean, the first one is more of a compulsiveness, you have to. The other one is a choice.
Yeah.
So language is a choice, by the way, right? Overall, you can always choose to speak differently than how you speak and have
So
those
true.
differences there.
Yeah. When you think of it, everything is a choice, is it? And I think that is one of the pillars of authentic leadership is the awareness that I always have a choice. I'm the one to choose, or at least if I'm the one to choose, I don't have reasons to complain afterwards. I own my decisions and the consequences thereof. And then, yeah, you feel so much more empowered, right? The sensation is so different.
True.
And you can iterate so much better because if you're part of the problem, you can also be part of the solution. Whereas if you're in this victim mindset, in the have to mindset, well, basically things are as they are, and poor of me, there's not much I can do about it, and you feel a lot more helpless, right? Just one single word.
Right, right. And, single word, but a massive change, right, in thinking and in perceiving. So, is it a framework you have in terms of helping people change the language?
I think, yeah, ontological coaching is a lot about that. Well, it's not you. I was trained in ontological coaching, then you start to incorporate all host of other methodologies and things and that's again authentic leadership, I would say. You just pick the things that make sense to you, that work for you, that are meaningful for you, and you apply them and you grow them, right? So yeah, how do I help people in changing their language? First of all, it's pointing it out, right? It's noticing, say, oh, you just said that, you have to, do you? And having them realize that, and then taking them and say, okay, what is possible from here?
Right.
What if you didn't have to and you just chose to, or you got to? What would change? And then people notice, right? So it's really about exploring that, and also probably having them see that, hey, the other word was just the way of looking at it, as is the new way of looking at it, and which
Right.
one is more productive for me?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And
At
you have
least
to
this.
go.
Go ahead. You have to.
You have to take that step by step. You have to invite people to experiment with that, because people don't believe it at first. So they have to be willing to at least do a tiny experiment, right? And say, okay, let me try this out. Just before our call, I had a senior executive who had his own way of working, very controlled, very much in control of things, and he didn't like it when they changed his plans, etc. And also he was very chaotic in his thinking and his way of working. So he said, okay, by the end of the session, I'm aware now that I want to be more structured, dedicate time to planning, dedicate time to this. And he came up with a 7-step action plan from
Okay.
his chaotic mind. And that is just forcing yourself to do something that you still don't believe.
Right.
Your former self doesn't believe it yet. So I think there's a lot of power in starting to do these experiments, try out tiny things. And I said, okay, why not just choose one of those things and really intend to do them and see what happens? Become curious about what happens and what doesn't happen, what works, what doesn't work, and iterate and tweak it, because it's not so much about the thing that works. It's about what works for you.
Right. Claudia, so much of learning in this conversation with you.
So much of talking from my end.
No, but I really, really, so how powerful it is just to even recognize the choice of word. How can it just change the perception and the perceiving of the world, for a
Yeah.
person.
That's the beauty, don't you think, of our job? And it's also a beautiful reminder. I mean, I don't know about your case, but for me, every coaching session is basically a reminder of, hey, I have a choice, and authenticity is a choice. And
Right.
when you help other people doing that, it's also a powerful reminder for yourself, right?
True.
Because one thing is knowing, and I mean, I myself as a coach, I'm still very much human.
Right.
So yes, it's also these moments where you can stop and say, hey, how can I apply this to myself, and how can I apply these client insights and their new way of phrasing to myself.
Great, Claudia. Thank you once again for your time today, Claudia. And what a wonderful conversation. If I were to ask you to, for people who are looking for authentic leadership coaching, and if they want to contact you, what's the best way to get in touch?
There is my website, which is www.claudiavanverseveld.com, which is, unless I spell it, kind of complicated. And then there is an email, which is a bit easier, which is claudia at la diferencia. So yes, and people can find me or contact me on LinkedIn. So yeah,
Sure, we're gonna
I can be
post
found.
your email address and website on our description section of the video so that people can click on the link and get in touch with you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And by the way, thank you so much, Claudia, for the time today. And another thing that I wanted to ask you is, you know, You've you've kind of done a lot of communication work earlier, marketing communication, and then you've moved into authentic leadership. Is there a parallel you draw from there, or the learnings that you draw from marketing to authentic leadership coaching?
Well, there are definitely things that I can take, right? There were things that were a bit hindering maybe in the beginning because in marketing or in communication, you are the one telling people what to do, right? In a consultancy role. So that could be a bit hindering in the beginning, plus the conception that, okay, if I know branding, I will know personal branding. And going beyond that, there's a lot of aspects that are really useful. I mean, in communication and in marketing communication, you're very used to distilling messages. And in coaching, what we're really trying to do for our coachees, for our clients, is taking away the fluff is not a very nice word, right? But really getting to the essence of what people are saying. And people cannot see that for themselves because all these variables are spinning in their heads. And so if someone from the outside can just say, okay, so you want this. So that is what's happening. So this is what you're feeling. And then they become, oh yeah. And then you point them to what's possible and positive, and you get so much out of the way. So yeah, that distilling drill, I think, is a very useful one. Creativity also, the creative part from advertising and well, any creative endeavor basically is also very helpful. First of all, when people are stuck in opening up, because the creative process basically it's opening up, it's diverging. And then at some point saying, okay, I've identified a whole lot of new options. Now let's converge that into something actionable. And coaching is basically very similar in that sense. It's about opening up, expanding the mind and seeing new possibility. And then choosing to focus and where you want to focus so that you can act upon it and make it a reality. So yeah,
Wow.
these two things come to mind.
And I like what you said about diverging and converging. That's really a coaching process overall, right?
It is.
Zooming in and zooming out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, true. Same principle, slightly different wording, but yeah.
So, Claudia, by the way, my laptop's battery was another reason that I did the closing first, so that in case we need to edit, we can just tweak and edit the way we want to edit. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Are you good on battery or,
yeah, I am
and I
good.
mean, how are we doing? Are we,
No, no, we're
is
doing
there
very well.
anything
We're
that,
doing very
yeah.
well. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And tell me, what about authentic leadership that I've not asked and I should ask you?
That's the perfect coaching question, isn't it? What is there I wanted or I think is important to say? Oh, there is one thing. And I get asked that a lot, which is it's all nice and well to be authentic. And at the same time, there's corporate goals and I have to report into people and there's interest and there's corporate values and culture, right? So how do I go about that? And I think that's a very interesting question. And I kind of struggled with that by myself in the beginning until I came across this method by he's an Australian Canadian coach, Michael Bunjay Stanier, who wrote a great book about this, which is Do More Great Work. And it's basically about this. It's about how can I bring my best and authentic value? So identify that on the one hand and make it work in the context that I'm in. And then you can find different scenarios because sometimes people are just not in the right place.
Right.
If what I'm noticing inside and what I think I bring and what I believe in and what I want to achieve is just totally not aligned with the corporate values, with the team you are in, etc., then you're probably just not in the right place. And it doesn't have to be 100% overlap.
Right.
So there's lots of exercises there that really help you say, okay, when was I my best self, and how can I bring that to the role, and what is asked of me, and how can I bring that from my authentic self and not doing it because I think it is asked of me. And then it's basically I would say an exercise that we all have to do. Am I in the
Right.
right place? Am I in a place where I can offer my best value. And it starts by being courageous enough to do it in the first place,
Right.
to recognize it. And I think that's the first big step. Okay, what do I really want to get out of my career? And that's also a very hard one, right? And maybe that's also one to highlight this purpose thing. I mean, purpose is also part of authentic leadership, and purpose is beautiful if
Right.
you get to know what your purpose is. And I also think it's a bit overrated, and it's a reason for overwhelm for many people, because I hear so many people saying, I don't know what my purpose in life is. I mean, I guess I'll know by the end of it when I look back, but I just don't know. So how do I guide myself then? And one of the things I tend to do is, rather than looking at purpose, is looking at the direction you would want your life to go in,
Right.
taking into account what is important for you. So you don't have to know the end destination. We can never know the end destination because we're a
Right.
work in progress. So
Right.
what is important for us now is probably not important for us in 20 years, right? So forgetting about the destination and thinking more about the direction is something that I find, or that many people find very useful,
Right.
if they're not able to point to their purpose. And I recall a conversation with an MBA student. He came to do an international MBA to Madrid. And we were talking about, in class, in a workshop, we were talking about goals. And we were talking about the distinction between means goals and end goals. Being means goals, a goal where, I want to learn English so that I can go and live in the States for a year or whatever, right? So if you can answer this so that,
Right.
then it's a means goal to an end.
Right.
If there is no more so that to say, then you could have an end goal. Well, talking about this distinction, I remember this student raising his hand and saying, "This has just saved my life." Because I came here, I was a professional basketball player back in Austria, which is where he was from. And I knew my purpose in life, and my purpose was being an NBA player. And I knew that I was going to be the best basketball player I could be. And then he had an injury and he couldn't play at the level he was playing at so far. So he kind of, his world ended, right? Because his purpose was no longer there, and he felt tremendously frustrated. And he needed to stop that career. He started to work for one of the big fours, totally unhappy, putting in 12, 14 hours in a day in a place where he just didn't feel he belonged. And he was so miserable that he said, okay, let's do an MBA and go to, he chose Madrid, and forget about this all, and I'll see what I'll do. And this concept of direction helped him so much, because he said, now I know a direction. I know the things, the elements that are important for me.
Right.
And I know I recognize sports is very important for me. I recognize how it helps people. So with these ingredients, I can then make it focus on a direction for my life.
Right.
And so I still feel I'm getting somewhere without having to know the end destination. So I think that's also an important thing to take into account.
Right. And I think sometimes I believe questions like what's my purpose is always a question which requires exploration all the time,
Yeah,
because it can change and it should change. I think you can't have a purpose which will serve your life forever.
so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. Oh, and then maybe one thing, I used to use this at the beginning of when I was doing personal branding trainings, and I still find it a powerful idea, right? In favor of authentic leadership, which is the article by Bronnie Ware, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. I think many people have heard of the article, right? It's not a
Yeah.
scientific study. It's just this Australian nurse who working with people at the end of their lives, right? In palliative care, she would start to ask her patients the question, okay, what is it you most regret when you look back on your life? And the number one regret was, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not true to what others wanted of me. And the sooner we realize that, the more we can act upon it, right? And the freer we become.
Right. And the more authentic we become.
Yeah. And the more fulfilled and probably the more impactful, right? And there we covered the benefits
Right.
of authentic leadership.
Right. Right. All right, Claudia, that is it for today. I think it was really a lovely conversation.
Thank you.
And
Really been a pleasure.
I think I do want to bring you back to the podcast sometimes to talk something.
Happy to.
Yeah. Thank you again, Claudia.
Yeah, it's been a joy. It really has. Hope it's
Thank
been
you, and I'm
useful
looking
for our
forward to
listeners.
catching up with you soon.
Okay, me too. Thank you for having me.